Professor Kijima, you are being recognized as one of the key figures in decision system science. I would like to ask you, could you please explain us the system's view on the concepts of value co-creation and service innovation? How are they best applied in companies and their value networks?
It's a very interesting question, I think. Actually, I'm a sort of system scientist, and I'm interested in system science and system thinking. So I'm very happy to answer this question. I would like to distinguish between systemic thinking and systematic thinking, right? And sometimes systematic thinking is also called hard approach, hard thinking. So it focuses on the optimization or very functional approach. So how to solve the problem in a sufficient way. So in the term of the value co-creation, how to realize value co-creation in an efficient way, right? But on the other hand, systemic approach is more relevant to talk about value co-creation because the focuses or emphasis of the systemic approach is on the structure or the systemic meaning. I mean, so what is the real problem with the value co-creation? Maybe quite many say stakeholders are involved in this in the value co-creation process. So what's the relationship among the stakeholders? What sort of structure among the people? I mean, hierarchical structure or a very flat structure, or and say, of course, the process of their sort of behavior or of their sort of decision making. Right? So they are sort of complementary approach. So both are important, and we need to use the both attitude, both thinking to tackle the value co-creation process, right? And especially when we talk about the systemic approach, the relationship is more and more important than the elements themselves, right? So how do they collaborate, or how do they behave in a sort of collaborative way or something like that? And also the sort of dynamic process like say evolution or sustainable development or that kind of more dynamic values which is created through the interaction, right? So I mean, two aspects of value co-creations, time and space. When we talk about the space, the network or cyclic or some sort of say structural characteristics, right? And the relationship. And also these relationships should be, say, dynamic. So it always changes time by time, right? So talk about the systemic properties of the value co-creation process. We need to pay attention to these aspects, right? Right. I would like to talk about just a little bit about the sort of Japanese specific character of the value co-creation, right? Because maybe you know that in Japan or maybe in the Oriental countries, the harmony among the stakeholders is more sort of appreciated than in the Western world. I mean, sometimes it is called a group-oriented behavior, right? So individualism is a quite characteristic to the Western world. But in Japan or in the Oriental countries, you know, harmony or appreciation of other people's value system is also important, right? So in that context, you know, the value co-creation process in Japan is a bit different from the Western world. Yes. So I think learning from each other is quite, say, useful. I mean, to level up the sort of value created by the interaction. Yes, I think.